If you are a health or fitness coach and you've made at least $8,000 in your coaching business at one point in the history of your company, but you are not able to keep consistent income coming in. Some months you might get a bunch of clients, you might make a bunch of money in your business, and then other months it's just freaking nada, nothing. And you are at your wit's end. You're just like, why? How do I keep stability coming in so I am able to have predictable income coming into my business on a regular basis? I'm going to tell you why. Because I've lived this life and it sucks. And I've lived it more than I care to admit over the last 13 years. In fact, contrary to what some of the Stripe screenshots and the gurus might say, there's not very many businesses that just have a straight trajectory of going up, 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 happily ever after. Most businesses will start to do okay, and then the business owner just isn't at the capacity or the level or the leadership to be able to take that business to the next level, and so they crash. I'm going to go over and give you today what has been most helpful for me with being able to stabilize my income, because again, I have been there and done that. And for some context, when I first was building my gym, my fitness center, I don't know if you've ever worked in person, if you've been a trainer, if you've worked in a gym, if you've owned a gym, but it's quite different than the online game, but there's a lot of principles, there's similarities that go along with it. And I remember growing my gym, oh my God, man, blood, sweat, and tears going into that thing. Basically started with an abandoned hockey rink, and we ended up turfing it out and turning it into, we fixed the sinkhole. There was a sinkhole in the middle. We fixed that. Otherwise, we would lose clients quickly. It's like, where did Joanne go? I think she's down in the sinkhole, right? No, so we fixed the sinkhole. We turfed it out. We turned it into South Florida's first and only outdoor fitness center. It was awesome. We got to a base of about 300 members. We served over 3,000 people during our time, about 8 years running that gym. Very successful. We even had investors come out. One of the clients at our gym, her husband, and we invested. We took it to the franchise. So we basically took it from nothing into like a very successful concept. But it wasn't sunshine and rainbows. Even in that process, there were so many ups and downs. I mean, ask my wife. There were seasons to where I literally couldn't pay myself a freaking dime, not for months at a time. And then going into my online business, I remember when I launched it, it was new. It was right before COVID. It's like there was a godsend of, hey, you should launch this online thing. And I was like, okay. It was September 2019, maybe October. Anyways, we launched it. It was doing okay. And then for obvious reasons in COVID, it exploded. And we were able to take that thing from nothing into a six-figure business within months. But then, going into 2020, 2021, there was a lot of instability. I mean, some months I'd be posting content and I would get like a decent amount of engagement, like people were liking it, but it was just such an inconsistent flow of clients coming in. Like we would have like a 22K month, then we would freaking do like an 8K month, and then we would do like a 5K month and a 17K month. And it was stressful, man, because I was trying to hire team members. I was trying to figure out if I'm going to run ads. At that time, I was listening to the gurus. We were sending out 50 to 100 DMs a day. I was hiring appointment setters. I had VA agencies and the whole shebang, people taking my triage calls. And we were seeing some growth, but it didn't fix the actual problem, right? Of like instability. And I was like, what do I do? And so the first thing I figured out was actually all the way back from when I was running my gym. I had hired a guy named Pat to help me with the franchise part of my gym. And during this process of franchising a gym, and you're going to see here in a second how oh my God, it's so applicable to everything that we do in our businesses and even in our life, right? Even if you think about fitness, one of the first lessons that he taught me was the concept of literally systematizing everything. Because when you're first starting a business, you're just like throwing shit against the wall. You're just like, boom, I hope it sticks. I hope it sticks. You're trying to figure out your message, right? You're trying to figure out what your avatar actually wants to hear, like what topics they want to hear, what marketing pools, what sales processes work, what is congruent with you. And so you're kind of just putting out volume, you're doing things. But eventually you got to systematize it. For the franchise, one of the major lessons I had to learn and really the skills I had to develop was building an operations manual from literally start to how do I start my business? How do I start an LLC? To how do I retain clients and build a community? And everything in between, from how do I market, different marketing strategies, how do I sell, how do I do my memberships, all of that stuff. And when I was trying to figure out the online game, that was one of the major lessons that came back up for me was like, you've got to systematize everything. And so it started with my messaging. And I actually learned this. I learned this back in the gym business, and I was reminded of it by a guy named Ben, a mentor that I had hired. And he was like, that was like his thing. He was really into the messaging. And that's what got me back into it. I was like, oh my God, it's so true. And so I went down this rabbit hole and I started to build out messaging for my fitness business at the time. And so we were doing okay, right? We were getting clients. It's not like we were getting nobody. But the messaging was still kind of generic. And at this point, I mean, there were so many trainers coming online. And so I was talking about like fat loss and belly fat and stuff like that. And one thing I really had to learn is the first system was around messaging. And it was about being able to create a unique mechanism and or a big idea, a unique angle that you could bring to the market. And so when I did this initially, I came up with a bunch of stuff, and to be honest, most of it didn't work, but one thing stuck. And at the time it was the stubborn fat solution. And it really stuck with people. And then I started to come up with belief shifting stuff, right? Because like Russell Brunson talks about, partly, belief shifting goes way deeper, by the way, than what Russell Brunson talks about in his Expert Secrets book, but that's a really great start because it's timeless. But it's like being able to find that, I can't remember what he calls it. I think the domino belief is what he calls it. You got to find that domino belief. What's the belief that if you get people to believe, they're going to automatically want to become buyers, or at least be interested to learn more? And so in my case, I had to get people to believe that in order to lose stubborn belly fat, they had to learn how to eat right, not just healthy. And that when they were eating healthy, they were significantly hurting their hormones, metabolism, and all of these things. And once people believed that to be true, then they were interested in my stubborn fat solution. And there's a bit more to it when it comes down to belief shifting, but that's the basis. So setting a system around it of how can you articulate your big ideas, your unique mechanisms, how can you get more specific in your messaging in concrete and tangible so that on a regular basis you're putting out the right words in the right way to the right people. And that leads us to the content system. That was the second thing that helped us stabilize and get predictable income coming in. Because back in the day, it was like content calendars, right? It was like freaking on Monday, do a connection post. On Tuesday, do an authority post to show social proof, right? And like, that's great for beginners. You know, it's like if you're going to the gym, hey, on Monday, do this, Tuesday, do that. But eventually you kind of understand and you learn the concepts and you could develop your own routines. And with content nowadays it's commoditized. Information is a commodity. I mean, people can pull up ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, and within seconds, they can get information to basically anything they want. And it's probably much smarter than us. It's like pulling from infinite knowledge, right? So it's probably much smarter than we are, if we're being honest. And so what makes predictable, at least leads come in, inbound leads, is what most, at least what I'm going after, is having a well-done content system. And so we've come up with this term called the strategic content ecosystem. And basically, it's a fancy way of saying, like, how are you actually getting people into your world? And so for us, back in the day, it was just Facebook group, and email. And then I started a podcast. Nowadays, it's Facebook profiles, what I use. Some of my clients use Instagram, but you have a top of funnel platform. And it's your main channel. That's where you're getting traffic. That's where you're growing. You want to have a system in place to be able to make sure you're getting at least 10 new leads a day. So if you're on Facebook, you want to make sure you have a system to get at least 10 new friends a day that look like they could be ideal clients. And then if you're on Instagram, you want to make sure you're getting 10 new followers, right? And then you want to make sure that you have a cadence to get them into long form content. And so for some of my clients, they'll use like Facebook groups for this process so they can do live trainings and stuff in there. I typically am using like YouTube as a very middle of funnel. So I'm able to provide longer form content that's hopefully more helpful and in depth than I can ever do on a short form platform like Instagram or Facebook. And then I leverage email. Email is like the kind of middle ground. It's like the glue where I'm taking my best content, posting it to email, sharing my YouTubes, posting it to email. You see? And it creates this ecosystem to where people can see my content, my short form, my medium form, my long form, and they're able to like live in my world if they vibe with me and get tons of value. And this starts to create more inbound leads. And so what we do is once per month, we'll run what I call a conversion content campaign. And this is a very strategic campaign where we usually have 3 to 5 different posts that are promoting some kind of conversion event. And so this could be a masterclass, a workshop, maybe you're doing a promotion for your core offer. It could be a multitude of things, but it's designed to convert. And so you have a really good hook. You're going to have some kind of unique angle to it. And then you're going to have a call to action that's very specific and clear that's driving people towards this conversion event. And when you do this correctly, you're creating demand. And what makes this work is the content ecosystem, right? So when you have the messaging system dialed in, right, you saying the right words in the right way to the right people, and you have some kind of unique angle or big idea that you're bringing in that creates intrigue, then all of a sudden you run these campaigns that have these very great hooks and a topic that people care about, obviously, and a unique angle that intrigues people and a great call to action. You're going to have so much more demand for it because of what you're basically your messaging and your content system are doing the heavy lifting, and now you're able to convert more predictably. So this is what gets, at least for us, has gotten us more inbound leads over time. And in fact, Google and Facebook have both done studies on this, where I think Google's is the 7-11-4, where they say that for most brands, your consumers have to consume 7 hours of content from you, 11 touch points, and on 4 different mediums before they're ready to buy, or something like that. I know the 7 hours and 11 touch points are very similar to what Facebook also did a study on. And so if all you're doing is like short form content, it's probably why it's not super predictable, right? And so that's the content system. And then you want to stay diverse with the types of content, right? So there's still like connection content, authority content, influence content where you're shifting people's perspectives on commonly held mistakes or objections or beliefs they have, and then your conversion content. So you want to have that good mix so you're hitting the right psychological triggers. So there's the messaging system, the content system, and then there's the conversion system. Once you got these inbound leads coming in, maybe you're booking sales calls or you're selling into DMs. And if that's working for you, great. But what I found to be true is I freaking hate DMing people. It feels very inauthentic. I feel more like a boiler room. I hate managing salespeople. Maybe it's a skill deficit. I don't know. For me at this point, I think it's just not in my values and the business model that I want. So I'm so much more focused on inbound conversions. And so the way we do this is primarily through workshops. When people are engaging with our masterclasses, our conversion content, they become inbound leads, and it's very easy. We can send them to an offer document that basically outlines our offer, or we can get them onto a quick call to see if we can be helpful to them and if it's a good fit. But a lot of times we'll just invite people to our workshops, and most people that follow me are smart enough to know that like I vibe with him. I feel like he can help me get to a 6-figure business or 7-figure business in some cases. And people either trust me or they don't trust me, and they vibe with me or they don't vibe with me. I call it a value first conversion process because it's less about you needing to be aggressive and sell, and it's more so you just showing up and being in your zone of genius and freaking just helping people. And of course, you can invite people. Like I'm not just like hoping and praying that people come, but I know people are smart enough that are following me that they're going to be like, cool. Like I've seen Jason's stuff. His offer says that he can help people get to, 20, 30, 40, 50K. I see social proof that he's done it. I know he has the experience. I know people are smart enough. If you want to work with me, you know how to reach out to me. I don't need to give you a call to action every single time. It's like people know that we're open. But you can give them like these invites on these workshops or masterclasses or whatever your kind of medium, your mechanism is here. And you can just be like, hey, look, if you want to go deeper, if you want to get to a consistent 30K per month business, this is what I want you to do. If you want to take a next step or get information on our co-creation offer to where I literally help co-create the client acquisition system with you, this is what I want you to do. So you can have stuff like that, but you want to have a system in place. Otherwise, you're kind of left to this unpredictability. And then on the very last thing that's helped is my fancy name for it, the scale and freedom formula, because it's just about making sure that you have just the systems on the back end for things. So your delivery and onboarding, right? If like I was to drop 10, 20 clients on you right now, would your onboarding system break? So you just want to make sure you have those systems in place, that you have just a basic process to delegate tasks. So for me, I will just create Loom videos and I will, give it to my virtual assistant who's amazing. He will be able to take that, go into ChatGPT, create a SOP. So you want to have a rhythm for creating SOPs for the basic tasks in your business. So that way you can offload it, delegate it, and you're not having to micromanage people. It's very easy. So you want to have that in place. Otherwise, it's really hard to scale, right? And it's really hard to have freedom when you're just constantly chained to your business. So it's a very important piece to have in place. And so those have been the major things, right? Messaging, and I can even say around offer, but when you say the right words in the right way to the right people and it's actually compelling to them, it's going to convert. You're at least going to get more interest in everything that you're doing marketing wise. You have a content system in place. I have an ecosystem to where we're sharing different types of content. We're using Facebook, YouTube, and email. That's where I'm at. If you're under 5 clients per month consistently right now, I would just stick to one platform. That's what I did, at least. I was just on Facebook and I leveraged email. That's pretty much it. Once you get over 5, 10 clients a month and you're trying to scale that, having a long form platform like YouTube or a podcast really helps as a middle of funnel, as it gets more long form content consumed. Running a conversion content event once per month has been tremendously helpful for creating that predictability if you do it right and you're actually building demand. One thing I didn't mention is one thing we added back in based off advice that I got from a mentor of mine, and we've been doing it for the past year and it's worked really well, is we have a waitlist rhythm. So I'll build up interest on a waitlist, and then once a month or once every 6 to 8 weeks, we'll open up doors to our program, to our co-creation offer or to our inner circle. When we have spots in between, I might put out an email or put out a post or reach out to people and just be like, hey, I got a couple spots open for our XYZ offer. But having that rhythm has helped as well because we're able to build up a wait list. Like my client Patty we helped her build up a wait list of like nothing crazy, but like 30 women. So when she opened her doors to a program, to her core offer, she was able to get like 10 or 11 people in it within just a week or so. And so it makes it much more predictable when you can basically like bring the flow in, right? And then you just monetize the flow. I hope this has been helpful and insightful for you. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, get out there, make some money, and change some lives.